Thank you so much, dear Belen, and congratulations, dear High Representative, dear Kaya, dear ambassadors, dear colleagues. I'll start by saying that these are not easy times to be a diplomat. And you certainly don't need me to tell you that, because sometimes it feels like we live in a time where the loudest voice commands the most attention, where violence drowns out dialogue, where spectacle beats substance, where comfort is sought in isolationism rather than the difficult compromise of multilateralism. And yet, in a world that is so impatient for sound bites, the long, hard work of dialogue and democracy has never been, and diplomacy has never been more important. And this is where you, our ambassadors, and your teams and delegations are indispensable. You are Europe's face and voice. You defend our values. You push back against false narratives. You make sure that when Europe speaks, we are heard, we are respected, and we are trusted. Diplomacy isn't about shouting the loudest or necessarily securing quick wins. It is often the slow and painful work of building trust, of finding common grounds and delivering real results for people. My message to you today is that when you look to the European Parliament, and this is not only because we're going to spend most of the day with you also tonight, is that you will find a reliable partner. When I became president of this institution 3 years ago, I was warned to limit my expectations. But I must say that my experience with you has been the opposite. I've seen firsthand that when we work together, we get so much more done. I've had the advantage of working directly with our High Representative as member of the European Parliament, as a Prime Minister, and now I know that without a doubt we share the same outlook and the same appetite for overcoming obstacles by solving problems and finding ways forward quickly and efficiently. Ultimately, our parliamentary diplomacy work is aimed at complementing the work you are doing by engaging with lawmakers around the world and building partnerships with over 160 national parliaments. Yes, of course, we are separate institutions, but this is not about treaty articles or interinstitutional divides. It is about the contacts that we have as a parliament, the meetings we take, the access we can provide, and the results we can help secure. Politicians speak to us in ways that they might not with others. And through parliamentary channels, we can pass messages, we can open doors, formally, informally, we can help push the EU agenda. A few examples. Trade agreements. They have to go through national parliaments, parliaments that we engage with day in, day out. In multilateral bodies like the G7 and the G20, our relationships with lawmakers help shape global discussions. And going forward, our contacts with the US Congress and Senate can help provide valuable access and pass messages directly to decision makers across the Atlantic. But all of this, we can't do it alone. We need your help. Many of you already do, and I really thank you for the valuable input you have provided to me in my experience in this job, and also to my colleagues who you are very patient with, you are very open to, but also that they can come back and say, we have had the best experience in what we've wanted to achieve, and also going forward, how we can help. And I think we can be proud of everything we've achieved already, and I think we should build on it. So my appeal to you all is ultimately work with us and use us more than you already do. Because when we join forces, when we work together in sync, our voice is amplified and we achieve more. And I know that this will be your focus when you discuss later at the European Parliament with my colleagues. Recently, I was asked about my vision for Europe for the coming years. And the answer I gave, and I'll give you a little bit of background perhaps also in the question and answer session, was realistic optimism. And I'll tell you why. Optimism because Europe has the resources, the scale and the influence to lead. We are the world's largest single market and top trading partner for over 80 countries. We are a bastion of human rights and democracy. But also realism, because leadership takes courage, the courage to challenge ourselves, the courage to be the first to say that we've made mistakes, that things can be done better, that things should be done better. If there's anything you will probably hear from each and every member of the European Parliament who was knocking on doors until 9th of June last year, is this. Citizens across the European Union asked for identical issues. They asked for security, they asked for access to jobs, access to housing, and essentially an easier, fairer, more secure life. From one country to another. This was my 5th European Parliament election that I ran, and it was the first time where the message resonated no matter where we went in the European Union. And I think it is that dose of realism and that courage to challenge ourselves, to think globally, to act in order for our citizens to be happy with what we are doing, to be content, to feel that we are doing something for them. Now, the question to all of this is simple. Now, will we lead or will we be led? Starting with Ukraine. I've said it before and I will keep saying it. Our support for Ukraine is not charity. It is not altruism. It is also self-preservation. Because if Putin wins, no one is safe. Not Ukraine, not Europe, not even the United States. This is why High Representative Kallas and President Costa made Kiev their very first official visit. And I know that because we are together, Europe is at its strongest. We all want peace. But as we enter our 4th winter of this war, I do not want us to let go of what we mean by peace. Peace must be just. It must be genuine. It must be grounded in the principle of nothing about Ukraine without Ukraine. And for that, there is no option. Ukraine must be in a position of strength. And that means that we, as Europe, must step up diplomatically, financially, militarily, and in humanitarian aid. We must work on freezing Russian assets. We must work more to tighten sanctions. And this will be our message to Parliament next week in Strasbourg as we mark the 3 years since the start of the war. But also, let's be clear, Europe must get serious about our own defence. Russia has turned its entire economy into a war economy. And Putin and his allies are challenging us through a variety of hybrid incursions. Europe must now, we have no option, no time to delay, match the scale of the threat. And this is the urgency that was echoed yesterday by the leaders yesterday at our retreat. It says a lot, but it also is telling as to how real the threat is and how far we've come as a union since that day 3 years ago when we woke up to war on our continent. But there is still a way to go. And this was what I said to leaders yesterday. First, we need to ramp up production. We need to increase defence spending and coordinate better. And this includes on critical infrastructure. It includes border control. It includes cybersecurity, because all of these are equal battlefields as we have on the ground. The same is true in our wider neighbourhood. The sham elections in Belarus a few weeks ago, they show us that Lukashenko's grip on power remains as tight as ever. Russian interference in Moldova, in Georgia, and the Western Balkans is a direct challenge to our collective security. And let's not kid ourselves. Enlargement is no longer just a noble ambition. It is now I firmly believe, a geopolitical necessity. And yet, truthfully, in the last decade, the European Union has lost more members than it gained. You think, Elizabeth, then you realize why. Because if we continue to drag our feet on enlargement, and we've had one summit after another where we argue over which conclusions are we going to get, sometimes having 27 different interpretations of those conclusions, sometimes 27 plus 3 different interpretations of those conclusions. If we continue to do all this, then others will step in to fill the void. Then there's our relationship with the United States, which I know is at the forefront of everyone's minds this week. Trade wars benefit no one. And our first priority must be to avoid one, because a lose-lose situation benefits no one. Now, of course, Europe is also prepared for any outcome, and we will speak from a position of strength. Alone, put us all together, individually we are small players, but together we are a force to be reckoned with. We don't say this enough. The US is one of Europe's oldest and strongest allies. Our 1.5 trillion euro trade relationship is too important, and imposing tariffs on each other would hurt companies and people on both sides of the Atlantic. Moving a little bit beyond the transatlantic relationship, Europe must also take a more strategic approach to the Indo-Pacific. What happens there has huge repercussions for Europe, just as what happens here affects them. From security to technology to climate, our interests often align, and we must get serious about building a stronger, more strategic Indo-Pacific relationship. The Middle East, another urgent test for Europe. The ceasefire, hostage release deal is the breakthrough we have all been hoping for, but the challenge now is to making it hold, getting aid in, getting the remaining hostages out, and rebuilding hope. A two-state solution, however difficult, is still the only path to security for Israel and a perspective to the Palestinian people. Europe must be more than a spectator here. And we must be actually the catalyst to help create the conditions for that to become a reality, for long-lasting peace and stability. Africa. We need to stop treating it as a problem to solve and start treating it as the equal partner it is. 12 of the 20 fastest growing economies in the world are in Africa. While we debate, others invest. Where we put our money, and we must do that where our mouth is, in infrastructure, education, agriculture, security, renewables, and raw materials. Because when Africa prospers, Europe prospers, and in turn, the world prospers too. And that means not turning away from what is happening in Sudan, where our distance from the atrocities we witness cannot mean that we close an eye to them. The same thinking must apply to Latin America. Our trade and association agreements have paved the way for deeper cooperation, but now we must go further and strengthen ties with like-minded partners, and we must also continue, without fail, coherently, clearly, to defend democracy wherever it is under threat, like in Venezuela. So, dear friends, the theme of this week's conference is an EU foreign policy that delivers. When the world looks to Europe, they must be in a position to see leadership that delivers on peace, on security, on prosperity. But we can only deliver if we work together. The European Parliament, I can proudly say, stands ready. These unprecedented times require unprecedented unity, and I know that together we can find the political will and the courage for Europe to lead. Thank you.